Welcome to the Grow People podcast with Pastor Jason, lead pastor of Revolution Church.
Hello.
I'm David Stein.
Nice to meet you, David Stein.
Nice to meet you too. Campus pastor at the Canton location of Revolution Church in what is now the new podcast studio. Well done to our artist development team for putting this together.
Very well done. Yeah.
This room has had many iterations. What was this before?
By iterations, you mean things it was before?
That's
a real fancy word.
Yeah.
This actually used to be our conference room when our offices were in the main building here in Canton. And then it was the creative offices, and now it is our studio for our brand new podcast.
Well played by our artist development team. This has been something, I don't want to say brainchild, but it's been something, it's been on your heart for a long time to do a podcast. It's called the Grow People podcast.
Yep.
Why?
Well, Grow People, is our mission as a church. For Revolution Church, our core mission of who we are and what we're trying to do is called Love Jesus, Grow People. And we've got a
right
nice,
here on this coffee mug.
Nice fancy mug there.
Placement.
That's a nice left-handed mug there. Perfect for you.
That's for people who are just listening.
Well, just a disclaimer as we get started. I am a heavy breather. And so I am told quite often by my family, quit breathing so hard. I'm like, I'm just breathing.
Yeah.
So
be grateful for that.
Exactly. The only other option would be me not breathing.
Which we're not grateful for.
We don't want to happen.
No.
So I'm supposed to be talking close to these microphones. And so if you hear my heavy breathing, just know.
You're good.
I'm doing okay.
You're good.
I'm good. It's just, so you're going to sip coffee. I'm going to breathe.
There were a lot of steps coming up here.
That's how we're going to get through this podcast. Yeah. You're going to drink coffee. I'm going to breathe.
Excellent. Excellent. So why Grow People podcast?
Oh, yeah. Why Grow People? Well, I think it's important to step back and just talk about the mission of our church, because that is why we're doing this, right? I mean, there's everything that we do as a church comes out of and filters through that mission. So Love Jesus, Grow People. And Grow People is the process part of our church. I like to say that our church is built on two things: the person of Jesus and the process of growth. So that's why we say love Jesus, grow people. First and foremost, the church exists for Jesus. It's his church. And then second, it exists for what Jesus says it exists for, which is to make disciples. And that's what we're commanded to do. So we say that, grow people. So there's a process to that. And as we have worked on that process now for over 11 years, there are things that we've tried along the way. One of the things we talk about a lot is the mission never changes, but the methods that we use can change. And so as podcasts have come back into popularity, it's kind of funny, when they came out 10 years ago, it's like, what is this? But really last year, we've been in this worldwide pandemic for the last 15 or so months, however long it's been. And just our conviction and to really help people, disciple people. And, when you take away the option of being able to meet weekly, gather weekly, you rely heavily on technology.
Sure.
Now, we've been blessed for a lot of years as a church that I feel like we've leveraged technology well. And, we were already online. We were already broadcasting. So when that reality came of like, hey, we can't gather in person anymore, our creative production teams, our artist development team just has done a phenomenal job already of getting the message out, through the method of technology. So in that same kind of vein, I think podcast fits in that to where, again, my conviction has been we just got to do a better job of discipling people and a better job of helping people to think biblically and to help them grow. So messages, obviously our gatherings, everything that we do, that is huge. That is where we proclaim the gospel. So the podcast is just another way to leverage technology to help people grow, to where we can discuss things on here that maybe we don't have time for in a message. Maybe things that other people may have questions about, so that we can address on here, whether that's, cultural topics, other biblical topics. So this is really, the answer to the question of the Why Grow People podcast. one, it helps us to accomplish our mission to actually help people grow, which is why we're calling it this, the Grow People Podcast, which just sounds great too to me. I think that's...
You've spoken before about many years ago reading a book by Henry Cloud.
Mm-hmm.
Where were you when you read that, and how life-changing was that?
Oh, man. It was, I was in seminary, and so mid-20s, and, I've told my story many times, but maybe for people that are listening to this that have never heard it, I didn't grow up in church, and I know you didn't either. But when I got saved as a teenager, when I went to church, I would always ask questions. Why do we do this? Why do we do that?
Mm-hmm. And you still do.
I still do. I used to annoy my mom and my brother and sister. I would always ask questions. And so when I went to church, I just naturally started asking questions. Why do we do this? Why do we do Sunday school? Why do we do Sunday night? Why do we do Sunday morning? And the answer I always got was, well, that's the way we've always done it.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's a joke to where, and I didn't come up with this phrase, but in church world, it's like if you do something 3 times in a row, it's the way we've always done it. So when I started thinking about church and wanting to invite my friends to come to church, and then God put it on my heart early on, again, to even plant a church, to do something new and different, to reach people that weren't willing to come to church with me, I started thinking, man, we've got to have a better answer than, well, that's the way we've always done it.
Mm-hmm.
So I was in seminary, going, learning theology, learning divinity, and thinking about all these things. And I read this book by Henry Cloud, which I got the privilege of telling him in person, just how much it meant to me, called How People Grow. And it was the first book I had ever read that broke it down at such a basic level. Mm-hmm. And what he did is it looked at, before sin entered the world, what are the elements that God, if you kind of think about it like things in the soil, elements in the soil, or, if you're making a salad or a food, like what goes into that to make it. Well, in the beginning, there was God. There was relationships, human relationships. He gave them things to obey,
mm-hmm.
Commands, and then he gave them work to do. And so he was laying that all out and just talking about that's how God made us to grow. So as I was thinking about that, and I love acronyms, and they just help me to remember things. And so I started thinking about that, and I was like, the book title was How People Grow.
Mm-hmm.
He's talking about God. He's talking about relationships. He's talking about obedience. He's talking about work. And I thought, where's GROW?
How about that?
How about that, right? And so in my mind, I still have some of the things I wrote down originally. It was like, that's what a church should be built on. A church should build itself on that process, because if a church builds itself on that process, that's eternal. That's timeless. And I think that's the thing that churches, sometimes today, churches can get so gimmicky and they try certain tools or tricks as opposed to building itself on what has always been true.
Right.
The eternal part. Well, that works in any culture, in any context. Preaching the gospel, helping people get connected in relationships, teaching them to obey, like Jesus told us, and then doing good works in the world. Well, I can build a church around that, and I can communicate that, and I can help people understand that process. And that works in Canton, and it works in Kenya, which we've seen, because
mm-hmm.
we've got Revolution churches in Kenya that are building themselves on that process. It's not a style. It's not a gimmick. It's not. It's kind of that universal principle that I think that God lays out for us in Scripture of what the church should be about.
It's not a program.
It's not a program. Yeah, that's the phrase we have. We don't want to build ourselves on a program. We want to build ourselves on a process, mm-hmm. because I think every generation comes up with programs, and those are great. They're not bad, but once a generation shifts or culture changes, well, that program is no longer working. Well, if you built your whole thing on that program, you're like, you don't know what to do.
Right.
As opposed to if you build it on a process, you're not tied to a program and say,
mm-hmm.
listen, we're trying to preach the gospel. What's the best way to do that? We're trying to get people connected in relationships. What's the best way to do that? Well, we can have that conversation. Back in the day, it may have been Sunday school. Today, it's groups. There might be a better way to do
mm-hmm.
it. And so as a church, we've always said we want to be committed to a process, not a program, and the person of Jesus.
Right.
So as a church, it's real easy to live there. We're committed to the person of Jesus. We're committed to the process of growth. And that's what this entire process of grow people in this podcast, what we're trying to do.
Cool. You are watching or listening to
Yeah.
the Grow People podcast. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. You may be getting them from any of the podcast areas, or maybe they even sell them at Buc-ee's. I don't know, but nice product placement on your Buc-ee's mug.
You like that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've not been to one. I drove past one. There's a new one up in, is it Clayton? Not Clayton. What is
Calhoun.
Calhoun, thank
Yeah.
you.
We should do a live Grow People podcast from a Buc-ee's.
Oh, that would be awesome.
That would be fantastic. Can we take this on the road? Are we doing that? Are we set up to do that?
At every pump.
We can do that, right? Yeah, we can make that happen. All right, I'm getting a thumbs up.
There's 100 pumps.
First, I got a maybe.
Chandler's over there. He's either watching a Braves game replay or he's actually engineering the program today.
He's engineering.
He loves his Braves.
He does.
Yep.
Yeah. Just like I love my Buc-ee's.
Yes. What is it about Buc-ee's?
Well, Buc-ee's first is it feels like the word gas station is not enough.
It's not.
But it started in Texas, Lake Jackson, which is, around the Houston area. And a guy, this was his nickname, and he wanted just to create one of the best experiences you could have at a gas station. And so it's more like the super Walmart of gas stations.
Mm-hmm.
It's a mini mart, a mini mall, however you want to say it. But they always have clean bathrooms.
It's just like. No? Anyone from Alabama? Okay.
What was that?
It was a mini mall commercial.
I've never heard
Totally. It was
heard that in my life.
In those really bad cable TV commercials?
Yeah.
Okay, this was a really bad cable TV commercial.
Oh.
And Leanna, my wife's from Alabama.
Yeah.
And so
Because you're not.
No,
Yeah.
definitely not. So she grew up watching this commercial. The dude's the dude's daughter walked into our radio studio up and coming a few years ago, and Leanna was able to get this guy on the phone, and he sang the jingle. Just obscure things. But, you look at Buc-ee's, you guys came back from a vacation, and your first 20 minutes back, you're just expositing on how great Buc-ee's is.
Yeah. I'm a cultural, I try to be in the culture, context.
He's like, there's 7 people in the restroom just cleaning it.
Oh, it's incredible. And again, for all of our Georgia friends, we've got 2 now in Georgia. And one down on 75 South by Warner Robins, 175 North going towards Chattanooga and Calhoun. It's hard to describe because you tell people it's a gas station, like a gas station? I'm like, bro, listen, over 100 gas pumps. I counted when I was because I was in a lot of Buc-ee's in Texas. Just in the men's bathroom, there was 28 stalls or urinals. And
well, there's something you didn't expect in the Grow People podcast.
Can we say urinals?
Of course we can.
There's an audience member that didn't like that I just said that.
We have a live studio audience.
We do have a live studio audience. Yeah, we have people that are helping us make this happen. No, but in the restroom, there are 28 receptacles, or however you want to say this, or 28 places to go to the bathroom. But it's incredible. I mean, it's huge. Mm-hmm. Like the bathroom itself is like 2,000 square feet. And so it's gas station on a scale that is just unheard of and unseen almost ever before. So it's a true Texas-sized gas station, and they have a brisket station where you can get fresh made brisket station. Yes, breakfast tacos with brisket sandwiches. They have a whole fudge station where you can get all kinds of fudge. They have a whole, beef jerky, their own line of beef jerky.
Please, if you're sharing this podcast, tag Buc-ee's because we do need a sponsor.
We do need a promo. Yeah. If we could get Buc-ee's to sponsor the Grow People podcast,
that would be amazing.
Brought to you by.
And if they're not believers, we'll work on that.
That's right. That's right.
All right.
So it's just phenomenal, and it's an experience. So whenever we were in Texas this summer, we would just stop at every time there was a Buc-ee's, whether I needed gas or not, and we would spend like $75 every time because we were buying, gifts and shirts and stickers, and I mean they have everything. So it is as it's expanding, people are starting to appreciate its just sheer amazingness.
So Bucky's is part of our discipleship pathway.
It is.
Um,
When you join our church, you have to make a commitment to only go to not pass up a Bucky's. Yeah.
all right. I do have a question to bring it back to Grow People.
Okay.
You had a conversation last year, and there were a lot of conversations during COVID, but you had coffee with an old friend. He had pastored a church for a long time, 30 years. And you asked him a great question, especially for somebody who has been pastoring this church for 11 years. You've been a pastor for 20. And in 2040, you'll have been pastoring this church for 30 years, Lord willing. You asked him the question, what is your biggest regret? What did he say?
It was amazing. You know, there's a lot of things that you could say in that moment, you know, about kind of big picture things, you know, like, oh, I wish I would have taken more risk, or wish I would have structured the thing like this differently, or not done this. But what shocked me was just at the simplicity of what he said and the statement that he said. He said, you know, I wish I would have helped people learn how to read the Bible on their own. You know, learn how to have a simple process to help them basically help feed themselves. And this kind of goes back to that whole idea of program conversations. The church can build itself on programs that people see that, oh, I must attend this program in order for me to grow, as opposed to the church. And again, I'm not opposed to programs. We do them. But the program has to be set up as a part of a bigger part of the process of helping people get to that point where they can understand how to read the Bible on their own, when they can understand how to feed themselves in that,
Right.
how to, you know, handle it correctly. And that's really what part of what we want to do with this podcast is even help people to do that. I mean, so many people today, even believers, are so biblically illiterate. And I don't mean that as a dig. I mean, it's just we're busier than we've ever been. We have more technology than we've ever had. But you should joke, it's like, you know, smartphones have made us dumber, you know, because it does things for us. Well, the same can happen in church. It's like, well, people do things for us. You know, oh, the church disciples my kids, or the school teaches my kids, or the church disciples me. Oh, that's the church's job. To where the job of the church is to equip people to do it. And that's what he was talking about from just a simple Bible study method. And we were already working on this as a church and even in our groups, but why we use now what we call REAP. We didn't come up with this, someone else did. But it fits well with the whole grow idea,
Sure
right?
does.
The whole kind of organic, you know, I was going to say multicultural, but that's not the right word. But the horticulture, what is the word for? I guess organic's fine.
Yeah,
right?
organics. That's good. Does anybody else in the room have a correct answer?
That's the word.
Shout it out.
Okay. Agricultural. That's the word I was looking
Thank you.
for. Metaphor. It kind of takes a second sometimes. But reap
From
is
the Latin, agricola, farmer. True story.
really.
Yeah.
You were a Latin major, weren't you?
I was, as bizarre as that sounds. Nice little Jewish boy majoring in Latin.
Yeah. Had that really work in your career for you?
Yeah, well, I thought I was going to be a priest. So, okay, agriculture.
Agriculture, reap. And so it's just a simple Bible study method that is you read, you know, the Bible, you examine
Right.
it, you apply it to your life, and then pray and ask the Lord to help you do it. So that was his point, was like he wished he would have set up something like that in his church to help people know how to do that on their own so that they weren't always so dependent. And that's what I think, you know, my conviction and our conviction as a church really coming during the pandemic is like they couldn't physically come to us.
Right.
You know, and that's where the conviction rose of, man, have we done a good enough job to equip them to do this on their own? You know, we were still able to get the message out, you know, again, thank God with technology, and we're still able to gather online, which was great. And thousands of people were doing that. But, you know, when you're restricting access to people, it's like, man, do they know how to read the Bible on their own? And the answer for that for so long has been, why do a Bible study? Well, a Bible study is still someone else's thoughts on the text, you know, as opposed to you digging in it yourself. And so I think it's better to better to teach people how to do it as opposed to just constantly providing programs for them to do.
Speaking of that, that segues really well into our Ask Pastor Jason segment. So if you're watching or listening and you have a question for Pastor Jason, make sure you're following us on Instagram. We'll be posting in Insta stories how you can ask Pastor Jason a question. The first question in the inaugural podcast came in along those lines. People do come to Revolution Church. They do watch online or they're in person because of the way you teach through the Bible. And we have been for the last several years teaching through books of the Bible, starting with Romans, then in Micah, now, of course, in John.
How do we teach it?
Verse by verse.
Verse by verse.
I've always said that.
Say I don't have the deep baritone.
Verse by verse.
There you go. Where's Pastor Thad?
So somebody wrote in a question. How do you prepare? Pull back the curtain. How does Pastor Jason prepare for a message?
Man, that's a great question. There's definitely things that I've been trained to do. Mm-hmm. Theologically and thinking about how to correctly study. From orthodox positions, commentaries, all that kind of stuff. But if you kind of put that aside, I think the biggest thing, and I remember John Piper, one of my favorite, and highly influential person in my life, said, we first start by just reading the Bible and then saying, one of your favorite phrases, whoa.
Yeah. Whoa.
This is God's word to me. And so me personally, I always want to read a text, just read through it, and then saying, okay, God, this is your word to me right now. So what are you trying to say to me? What are you communicating? And then that's the prayer part. You're conversing, having a conversation, almost even praying throughout, so you're reading it. Mm-hmm. So that's step one, just reading it. And so any text that I'm going to preach, I just read it, and then you start digging in and examining it and saying, okay, what's jumping out at me at this? And I'm such a words person. I love words, which is funny because I didn't like writing, still don't. I'm a very slow reader. It takes me forever to read books. I have almost every book I've ever read is like 2/3 read, and that 2/3
we can relate to that.
Yeah, that 2/3 has been read like 5 times, But in the examining process, part of that, and that's the part of the reap that I would say that's the most dense, is, okay, why did he choose that word? He said that word on purpose. Okay, so he said that word, now let me look at what kind of word is that,
Right.
Is it a verb? Is it a noun? What is the tense of it? Where is it at in the sentence? How does it fit in the context around it? Because when you're reading the Bible, and almost every, particularly the New Testament letters, they're letters, and so you're reading it as a letter, you're reading it all the way through and understanding where that's part of the examination process as well, understanding the context that it's in, what was going on there. So that's when you start digging into other historical things, start digging into those words. But almost, I would say 90% of the time when I'm doing a sermon, it's because certain words just jump out. And then I just dig into those words. And what is it about that word? And then what is the English equivalent to that? So there's a lot of study tools, that can help you do that. But I think anything else you do, or again, everything I learned in seminary still boils down to that. I'm going to read it, be amazed by it, that it's God's word, be in wonder and awe. And again, Piper says his problem with most commentaries is the first thing that they say is not, whoa. They don't say that. So that's the reading part and then the examining part. So any other tool that you use is going to come down to those basic things.
What a great explanation. And it does pull back the curtain. And that's one of the things we want to do here on the Grow People podcast is pull back the curtain a little bit on what is your church all about and how do these things work. We have time for one more real quick segment. It's called Speed Pastor. We will ask you
Speed Pastor?
Speed Pastor. We're going to ask you 5 rapid fire questions, which you have not seen, and first thing that comes to mind. You ready? Here we go.
All right.
And question number 1: Where was your first Whataburger?
In the womb.
Excellent. Question number 2: What song have you been singing in the shower? Not well, but what song have you been singing in the shower?
That's a good one. There's a band that I like. They're getting more mainstream in a couple of years, called 21 Pilots, and they have a song called "No Chances" that I've been jamming a lot.
All right. Okay. Question number 3: Food item you hate?
There's not many. Sauerkraut.
Sauerkraut.
Yes,
Wow. So you will
do not like
not on a hot
Now
dog.
here's the deal. No.
Okay.
No. Here's my philosophy on all things like hot dog and like a hamburger. I don't eat salad. I just called it salad. I don't eat lettuce, tomato, onions on my burger. If I wanted that, I'd eat a salad.
Wow.
I'm eating a sandwich because I want the meat and the bun and the cheese, and so that's all I'm eating on it. Same kind of thing with a hot dog. If I wanted sauerkraut, I'd eat cabbage uncooked, right? And so Lindsay loves that, my wife, and we made a rule early on in our marriage because she would cook it and then the whole house would smell. We need a product sponsor spot for somebody to get smells out of the house too. So she loves it. I do not like it.
Okay.
So that
All
would
right.
I would probably
pretty
be
adamant about that.
Yeah.
Okay. First Bible verse you memorized?
I think the first Bible verse that everybody memorizes is John 3:16. But I would say the first one that I memorized that I felt like was mine,
That had an impact on you.
that I learned was Ephesians 5:1-3, where Paul talks about being imitators of God, as dearly beloved children. That one was the one that was a go-to for me all the time, because that's what I was trying to do and what we're called to be. So I'd say that one.
Awesome. And finally, what's your dog's name?
My dog's name is Mia.
Okay. Did you have that off the top of your head? You started out with a sentence. My dog's name is. It's Mia.
I don't know. What did I do?
I don't know. It looked like you had to think about it for a second.
Oh, no, I didn't have to think about it. Was I supposed to just say Mia?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
There are no rules.
No, well, we didn't name her.
It's the first podcast.
Yeah, it is.
There's no rules.
Yeah, hey, and this is going to be fast and loose, right? So,
And that concludes the episode 1 of the Grow People podcast. For a transcript of today's podcast, listen to it and write down every word. Make sure you're following us on the social media. Facebook.
On the social media?
On the social media.
You're one of those people.
Yes.
Do you say the Kroger
I do.
and the Walmart?
I do. Yep.
Can you say Bell's Ferry for us?
Bell's Furry.
For
Go ahead.
Well, no, I was going to say for those of you that don't know, because we said you were not from Alabama, but
Right.
you are from
The Philadelphia area.
Philly,
Yeah,
and you have the accent.
I do.
And so when I don't know, years ago when you first started coming to our church and then on our staff, I noticed you said those words differently.
I do. I say them correctly. Bell's Furry.
Bell's Furry. And we were like, it's not furry as in an animal.
No, it's not.
Yeah,
but
it's not
it
a
is.
you.
But it's pronounced that way. Follow us on the Facebook and on Instagram, Revolution GA.
That's the main way.
That is not it. Revolution Church GA.
Revolution
Yeah.
Church GA.
Yes.
Do you even know?
Not really.
You're the one with all the radio experience that has 30 plus years of this.
Yeah. Revolution Church GA. Thank you so much, Pastor Jason, for your time. Thank you to our incredible artist development team for putting this all together. Make sure you are liking this, sharing it with your friends, and, of course, subscribing to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We will be back for episode 2.
Soon.
Soon.
Thanks, guys.